Pauline, I'd like to invite you to come into the session and
thank you, Alison.
Always a pleasure to see you, Pauline. Nice to see you.
How are you?
Lovely
Okay?
bookshelves. Yes.
I've just tidied them. I tidied them for this occasion, so I'm quite pleased with myself, quite frankly. So good. Thanks, Alison. It's lovely to see you, and it's lovely to be here with everybody. I find it still, although we've had lots of practice at this, I find it still quite odd speaking to big groups on the computer. So I'm really sorry not to be with you live. I am very much sort of advocating for an invitation to the in-person event in March, because I would really love to meet you as a group. I attended a conference last week for the first time in several years, and I realised how much I've really missed out on not being around other people in that way. So I think I do a lot of temperature checking, and I get lots of information and hear from how people are doing. So there is something very different about face-to-face. So that's me sort of pumping Alison for an invite for March.
You will be very welcome. We will absolutely invite you, Pauline. And everyone will know who you are because they've seen you here today.
They will. I'm also a little bit post-COVID, so my voice is not amazing. So I've got my cup of tea and I'm ready to go. So will I just kick off, Alison?
Yes.
Great. So, as I say, great to be here. And I find it hard to judge how some messages land. So I am perfectly happy with people putting things in the chat, offering comments, agreeing or disagreeing. That would be really helpful. So please feel like you can get involved. I think I kind of feel like I always start these conversations with, well, we're in interesting times in Scottish education, but I think we really, really are. I think we are at a bit of a crossroads at the moment. I think there's huge possibilities ahead, some of which carry probably some risk. And whatever happens next, I think our individual roles are going to be really critical to leading and shaping the change. I think I would also describe, though, our current context as a little bit volatile. I don't know if it feels like that for you in your roles. I only have to look at some of the response on social media, most recently, in reaction to some of the national work on anti-racism, to illustrate what some of the current tensions are and some of the things that I think we have to deal with, to be frank. So today I want to talk a bit about the role of school leadership in navigating this space that we are all in right now, and the important place of the standard for headship as you move into the Headship programme. A little bit about me in case you don't know who I am and wondering why it is that I am speaking to you on the computer this afternoon. I am Pauline and I have been Chief Executive and Registrar now for 20 months at the General Teaching Council for Scotland. I had a spell as Director there before that. I'm a primary teacher and an educational psychologist, and I worked as Director of Education and Head of Service in local government. So I know and work closely with lots of head teachers, with teachers who wanted to be head teachers, with those that probably weren't very sure if they wanted to be head teachers, and some that were definitely sure that they didn't want to be head teachers. So a whole variety of people. And one thing I think I've learned from working with teachers in general is that sometimes perhaps we wait until we are really, really ready before we step into something, whether that's school leadership or other opportunities. And I think that quite often we are ready as individuals before we think we are. That little bit of fear, stepping into something a bit different, something you've never done before, we have to kind of learn to embrace that little bit of fear. And I think as well, we have to probably make sure that some of our overthinking, and I am the lady who dymo labels things, so I am in the club. I think we need to make sure that our overthinking doesn't limit our ambition for ourselves and for those that we work with and for. So starting with the role of head teacher from Pauline's perspective, I think lots of people have different ideas about what the role of head teacher is. I think the title itself is interesting. So you're definitely in the space of being a lead learner and leading learning, but we've got to be honest, it's about a whole load of other stuff as well. So at times, finance and resource manager, people coach, buildings manager, maybe even sometimes cleaning supervisor, and occasionally crossing patrol. I know it all goes on. Overall, though, I think the role is mostly about people, whether they're big or little. And managing the multiple roles that the head teacher's title comes with can create tension and challenge, and means that we have to always make good decisions. I say a lot that teaching is complex, and I steal Buchanan's work on that, where I talk about teaching being complex intellectual work and also complex relational work. And sometimes I've found myself recently talking about teaching as a profession. Excuse me, just get my next bit of paper here. And I sometimes detect a little bit of a reaction from some teachers. I think sometimes we find it hard at times. This might be, you may disagree with this, but I think we find it hard at times to represent our own profession of teaching as that, as a profession. And in Scotland, I think we have a mature teaching profession. We have a long history of professional standards. We've got a guaranteed induction into our profession. We have entry requirements into initial teacher education. We have a commitment to ongoing learning as a form of active registration through professional update. And we've got a process for self-regulation. And all of that is funded by the people in this discussion and those that you work closely with. The teaching profession in Scotland funds the entirety of our work in being a profession. I sometimes wonder if internally to Scotland, recognising and valuing the aspects that we already have in place is a lot harder than for people out with Scotland, who look on in envy in some cases with the structure and the framework that we already have in place for our profession. So I think our collective strategy just now is to navigate these complex times and really turn what we already have into what we need to get what we want. And I think that for me is leading from the middle. If you look at the sort of Hargreaves work about the place of leading from the middle in an education system. So thinking about this complexity for a little minute, not only is teaching a complex profession, it exists in a complex space. So we know we have central government, local government, national agencies, employers, individual schools, communities, partnership bodies, and children and young people, and probably lots of other people that I have forgotten. So we can expect a role in leadership within this complexity to be challenging, rewarding, probably sometimes a bit frustrating. There are never going to be many straight lines, I believe, when your role involves people. I believe that one aspect that helps us thrive in this complexity is understanding our clarity of purpose. And that starts at the whole system level for me. Now, we're about to begin we have begun a national discussion on the future of education. My early vote is to support children and other learners to be good humans, to learn how to live well in community, with a deep love of learning and the skills that they need to flourish. And I think much of that applies to everyone that works in education. How do we thrive together, learn deeply, and develop the skills that we need? If schools are the space where this all comes about, this all develops, they're going to be complex places in a complex system with layers of complex interactions and conversations. My view is that we need to embrace this complexity and not continue to try to find simple solutions for our complex issues. And I'm really taken with some of the work of Deborah Kidd, who talks about complex needn't to be complicated, that there are ways of navigating your way through complexity. The leadership is about people for me, and working with people in this complexity needs us to step back and prioritise our own learning as individuals and as leaders. In Angus, where I used to work, when we recruited head teachers, we always had one question that we used to ask prospective candidates. And it was something along the lines of, if you were successful today and you got this job, head teacher of the school that you really want, what learning will you need? What ongoing learning will you need in that role? And one of the very good answers always was, the job is the learning. So yes, it's important to look outwards, to undertake particular courses, programs, to study, to read. But every day in the jobs that we do, there is a need to step back, reflect on what did I learn today? What did I learn today about myself, my role and my work? And what feedback, be it direct or not so direct, did I get? And what does this mean for what I need to do next? So, regardless of what your thoughts are about embarking into Headship, it is important, I believe, to frame this as some really important deep learning and stepping back. I know that the thinking in the group will probably extend from why am I here to being very excited to start this journey, to seeing it as a first step to gain something that you have ambition to achieve. Also, there's a view I know around about this is a requirement. Why do I have to do it? What difference will it make? Now, this experience that you're about to embark on, you're going to hear a little bit about the word qualification. What the Into Headship as a qualification is about. And this is right. But we all know that having a qualification doesn't necessarily make you a better head teacher or ensure that you undertake a role knowing exactly what to do. However, at system level, it says something very important about our profession. And that is reflected in what the whole programme of Into Headship means. It's why, if you like. And that why is built very deeply into the foundations of our profession and actually what it means to have a teaching council, to have a GTCS. So the importance of qualification is the reason that the GTCS came about in the first place, way back in 1965. Because Scotland's teachers recognised for themselves a need to ensure the quality of classroom practice. And the best way to do that was to build a structure that provided the requirement for teachers to be qualified. So post-World War II, there were concerns about the quality of teachers in Scotland's school. They were known as being uncertified teachers in Scotland's school, and that led to the beginnings really of our professional status. All those things I mentioned before, entry requirements, initial teacher education. What it means to be a teacher in Scotland is to have a teaching qualification. Teacher is not a protected title. Lots of people call themselves teachers, but not all are. Qualification is an embedded what in our system. Having one is central to what it means to be a teacher. Building on this, having Into Headship is now core to what it means to be a head teacher. And Into Headship, for me, is the product of very effective partnership working across national bodies, local authorities, and higher education institutes, all in the pursuit of supporting and valuing the important role of school leaders. Into Headship is unique. No other country has such an arrangement, exactly like ours. Another element really that can be looked on with some envy from those out with our own system. So we have a what, a qualification, delivered through a how, a programme of learning called Into Headship. The why, however, is about demonstrating a professional standard, the standard for headship. And that's what needs to be at the heart of this experience. In general terms, I think the why of why we do something can sometimes get lost in a leadership world. It's really quite easy to get stuck into what we're doing often losing the why about why we started a course of action in the first place. And sometimes I think of leadership roles as requiring the management of good ideas. We all have ideas about what we can do differently to support our children and young people, our staff and our communities. Most of them will be very, very good ideas, but we can't do all of them. We can't fund all of them. We can't do more of a couple of them at a time if we're going to do them really well, sustain them, and they're going to have impact. The why for you, I believe, in this work ahead is not the completion of a programme, gaining a new qualification. That's the what that you're going to do. The why is about the importance of demonstrating to yourself, others, and the system that teaching is a profession rooted in professional standards, and your achievement is a demonstration of your commitment to meeting the professional standard for headship. As a professional leader of our complex work in our complex system, and also in encouraging, expecting and supporting the maintenance and enhancement of professional standards by those that you work with. I'm sure that most of you will know that the suite of professional standards was refreshed and restructured just last year. It feels a whole lot longer. I wonder if Jack thinks it feels a whole lot longer. It feels a whole lot longer, but it was just last August 2021. And maybe possibly for the first time in that refresh, more clearly defining those professional standards that are mandatory benchmarks and those that are aspirational development frameworks. So the mandatory benchmark professional standards are, I'm sure you know, the standard for provisional registration and the standard for full registration. And the three aspirational standards are the standard for career-long professional learning, standard for middle leadership, and standard for headship. Although being awarded the standard for headship is now a requirement for those employed as head teachers in Scotland's local authority and grant-aided schools. That happened from the 1st of August 2020. Now that's all set out in some legislation from 2019. And what's important to note from that legislation is that the regulations require the achievement of a standard. That is what is built into law, the achievement of the standard for headship. Not for you to complete into headship, but for you to complete into headship as a demonstration that you meet the standard for headship. So into headship's the method that you demonstrate that you meet the standard. So that standard has to be absolutely at the heart of this experience going forward. Especially because professional standards describe our way of being as a profession. They give us our shared language. They are rooted in our shared professional values, but they do also provide a benchmark for professional competency. They enhance our professionalism, support our career-long growth, and ultimately ensure public trust and confidence in our profession. So for me, your individual commitment to this programme of learning in meeting the standard for headship is therefore not just potentially powerful for you as an individual. It says something really fundamental about the system that we have built together, our system of trusted teaching and trusted leadership. Alison mentioned in the introduction really that into headship is a unique experience to you. No two people go through it and experience the same things in exactly the same way. Now, I also mentioned that the partnership and consensus involved in the creation of into headship was a great strength, and I really believe that to be true. So it shouldn't be interpreted, though, that this is a one-size-fits-all programme of study. The programme should allow you to explore your own diverse way of thinking, being and leading in contexts that suit you best. Scottish education needs diversity of people and of thinking. We need to value innovation, not just for the sake of it in itself, but disciplined innovation or as Graham Donaldson would describe it, systematic experimentation. And we need to be critically informed to do that really well. And the standard for headship, along with the other standards, ask that of you. They ask you to be critically informed. Simon Sinek, I think, will probably be familiar to most folk as well. And I'm sure most folk know, he says start with why, but he also says, but know how. That dreams need structure. Into headship, for me, is part of the structure. And I think exploration of into headship should provide a framework for understanding yourself better as a leader and arguably as a person. What are your strengths, or I like to call them your superpowers, because I believe we all have superpowers in a leadership space, things that we're naturally good at. And where is your kryptonite, the aspects that you really need to work hard on, or I heard them described recently as your shadows, the things that are created in the more darker spaces that you know that are not your natural default style and you would like to develop. We all have both of those and a unique combination of those for ourselves. Self-awareness is absolutely fundamentally key, and not surrounding ourselves with people just like us. We shouldn't be only speaking to people who think the same things as us, who have the same views as us. The learning that you're about to undertake should support that self-awareness of your leadership, rooted in our shared professional values. The analysis that you're about to undertake should be valued if you're really truly to benefit from the experience. So it needs to really be undertaken with a spirit of participation and active involvement, and that includes active engagement with the standard for headship. Your version should look like mine, basically a mess with things written all over it and brings a coffee on it. It's an active document. And I think there is some real gentle power, I would describe it, gentle but powerful, that you gain from this type of learning experience. And I want to give an example of what I mean by that, because you're all thinking now, what's she going on about? Maybe not just now, maybe earlier on, to be fair. But I want to give you a personal example to try and explain what I'm meaning about this. I left Angus Council in 2019. The year before that, my chief executive had suggested that I go on a leadership programme run by Solace, the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives. And the programme was called Total Leadership. And for a year, I travelled once a month for 2 days to Birmingham. Had never been to Birmingham before. I met up with other leaders from local government at the time across the UK. Now, in all honesty, it was an extreme thought. Time away each month from my then quite young family, from work where I had, let's be honest, lots of things on my to-do list, lots of activities that needed me. But the aim of the course was to support you to become a chief executive in local authority. It was a phenomenal learning experience and I'm about to give you a list of words that before this experience, I don't think I would have said I was interested in. A phenomenal learning experience about governance, risk, leadership, people, politics. It was great. I loved it, and I loved the people that I met. And I think our work is to a large extent about the knowledge we have and the knowledge we share and the knowledge we grow and the people we meet, the contacts we have, the people we speak to. And this had really high quality aspects of both of those. But I did leave this course absolutely sure of one thing. I didn't want to be a local authority chief executive. It was an absolutely great and challenging job. You can make a real difference, and I saw that from the people that I worked with. But I wouldn't get to immerse myself in the things that are the aspects of work that I love. Teaching, teachers, schools and learning. So moving to GTCS was a very conscious and planned decision. I would suggest arguably my first one of that kind in my career, and seen by some as a little bit odd at the time. At best, it was a sideways move. I uprooted my entire family. We started again somewhere new, and then we had a global pandemic thrown in just to give us some extra challenge. So I learned some very important lessons during that total leadership course. And really, it helped me to develop some greater confidence about the decisions that I was going to make about my own future. And some of this, I believe, is applicable to your into headship journey and the journeys that I have seen of people who have taken on into headship that have gone before you. For example, the time coming together and learning is a really, obviously, a core part of the programme. I believe too, though, what you need to make sure you do is carve out some time for deep reflection on your own. What have you read that resonates with you? Again, what does this mean for what kind of leader you are, that you aspire to be, and how you're showing that in your day-to-day work now and what you might want to do differently? Essentially, I think this experience helps you reflect on who you are as a person, a leader, and why you're called to lead in the way that you are. Another piece of learning that I would share from my own story is that I learned to apply for positions because I wanted them, not because I thought I should apply for them, or even worse, that I thought other people might expect me to apply for them. And I know that the experience of into headship that you're going to undertake will equally see you have to make hard choices about what work to prioritise, how to juggle family and other life commitments. But I hope too it gives you what total leadership gave me, an opportunity to deeply reflect on who I am, why I was working in the way I was, and what I really wanted. So close to my last day in Angus, I met with my head teacher group and some other officers, and we spoke about my own learning from my role there. Now remember that interview answer. The learning is the job is the learning. So I'm going to finish what I have to say today with what I said then to head teachers. I believe them to still be true. And there is one that I believe now from my new role, even more strongly, is the route to impactful and inspirational education leadership in Scotland. Now, you may agree or disagree with my list. That's okay. I like a good social story. That's okay. We need, in my view, to get better at respectfully disagreeing with each other in Scottish education. So these are my thoughts. They may not be yours. I believe that these themes cut across the standard for headship will underpin your journey into headship and eventually the achievement of the standard for headship. So here goes. Number one for me is asking good questions. And what I mean about that is asking genuinely open, curious questions where you do not know the answer in advance, so that people you are asking the questions of understand it to be coming from a place of genuine inquiry, where you are curious and you're inviting some response, discussion. And it's the same for me with school leadership. Asking good questions is mission critical. You cannot possibly know everything that is going on in this complex system that we all operate and live and all the rest of it. You can't know everything. Sometimes what you've got in your back pocket is the ability to ask good questions to gain that understanding. The second thing for me is to embrace paradox. It is possible, in my opinion, to have fun at work and to have disciplined approaches and high standards. It is possible to have high standards and a tolerance for failure. Got to get better at things that don't work and learning from that and deciding what we're going to do instead. There is too a need in school leadership, and I think it comes out in the standard for headship, to understand that our world operates in the grey. There's very little of our work that's in the black and white, and that requires both deep experts in specific things and what I would call boundary spanners, those people who can work across, make connections, connect up deep experts to get what you need to plan where you need to go. And that embracing of paradox for me includes balancing that trust, and being a trusted profession comes with regulation. These things are not mutually exclusive. They come together in a package. So does empowerment and accountability. We operate in complex space. The third thing for me is finding your people. I believe that networks really matter in the world that we operate in educational leadership, but that not all networks are good. I think you need to be aware that echo chamber, I mentioned before, perhaps not speaking to people who think exactly like you, not appointing a leadership team who are exactly think about education and school leadership in the same way as you. We probably want to make sure that we are not running away from people that we really need to get closest to. So if you're interested in the adaptive leadership work of Heifetz, he talks about getting off your balcony, getting onto the dance floor and dancing with people you wouldn't normally choose to dance, which sounds just terrible. But sometimes it's about getting close to people that you wouldn't choose to normally, to help your reflection, your understanding, firm up your views and your points about what you believe of something to be true. The fourth thing for me is finding space to horizon scan. And the standard for headship asks that of you in terms of your own vision. And I often describe this as understanding your place on the hill. We're all on this hill of Scottish education together. We all occupy our own ground and our own space. We all have people around us. We all have people at the back of the hill that we've never met before, but who have got really interesting opinions, some of which we might wish to find out. We also need to make sure that we lift our eyes from looking on our hill outwards. What's coming on the horizon? What can we see? What can we not see? What can that person in a different place of the hill see that I haven't seen yet? And I need to connect with that to help me form my own compelling vision about who I am as a school leader, how I'm leading in my establishment and in my role, and how I work with the people around about me. The fifth thing for me is totally stolen from Michael Barber's work on deliverology, which is develop a culture of irreversibility. What do we know about change? We know that we do it, and sometimes we do it really, really well. And if we don't continue to revisit that change, people tend to reverse back into what they did before you introduced the change in the first place. So we need to learn to use critical periods really, really well. So we've got a moment now all together in shaping a future vision for Scottish education. But at school level, there are critical periods too, when something has gone particularly well for your school community, when something has gone particularly badly for your school community. How do you use that as your platform for possibility, for making change? And I do believe that making a difference is the biggest internal motivator for you and for your teams. But I am also very sure that all of these jobs that we do are marathons, not sprints. So there is a need to focus on that, how you make that change sustainable, a reality, and take people with you at the same time. My next point is, unsurprisingly, always learning. I think we all need to have a deep love of learning ourselves, model that in our conversations and in our interactions and in the work that we have with other people. Realize that our learning is mostly the job. We just have to train ourselves to think about what we've learned every day, what feedback we've got. And it also comes sometimes with finding the right seat. There is a huge amount of loyalty in Scottish education, and context really matters. And finding a space for yourself that speaks to who you are as an individual and as a leader and allows you to step back and do that ongoing learning is really, really critical. The learning needs to not be a nice add-on. It needs to be a fundamental part of what it means to be a head teacher, I believe. My 7th point, we're nearly there, is this is important. What we all do is incredibly important. We should not underestimate it. But it is also one part of our existence and who we are. Getting balance in our lives and keeping well is really required of you through the standard for headship. Keeping well is a doing job. You need to find the step back, make sure you have time away from work. I will always say that time away from work helps you be better at work. I have always found that it is moments usually involving big sky for me. So I'm on a beach or I'm out a walk somewhere. Don't think I'm thinking about work. I just think I'm walking and chatting, and I make a connection for something that helps me in my work. So it's finding those spaces for yourself. And maybe some of us need some rules in that space about what we do and what we don't do and when we do it and when we don't do it. Lastly, and this is the thing, this is the one that I am even more sure is critical to the crossroads that we are at in Scottish education right now. The core of our system and our profession is trust. Now, trustworthy leadership shows that we care about the work that we do and the people that we do it with. We are predictable, so people get a similar response from us regardless of who they are. We have integrity, and we have the ability to do what is expected of us. And the standard for headship is there as a framework for all of those aspects. So leaders in education, regardless of whether we are currently in a head teacher role or we aspire to be in a head teacher role, we really need to be comfortable in dealing with complexity and distilling the essence of complex information to those around us. And that means we need to focus on collaborative expertise, growing others, sharing knowledge, and delivering with impact. Building confidence and resilience in ourselves, in others, and the organisation is what we need to do. And fundamental to the success of all of that is, in my opinion, trust. So just to finish, if every conversation is an opportunity for change, being awarded the standard for headship, which will happen at the end of this process, should be a process that involves deep reflection, learning about yourself, knowledge growing and sharing, and many, many conversations. The bottom layer in the leadership onion, in my opinion, is a deep self-awareness of yourself as an individual and as a leader. It's as exciting, complex, and messy as the system we work in and for. Have real fun embracing this experience. Hold our trusted profession, demonstrated through our shared professional standards, close throughout this process. And thank you from me for the huge work you do and will do on behalf of the teaching profession. And I'm going to stop there, Alison, and be guided by you about what happens next.
Thank you, Pauline. Wow, lots of very wise words there, Pauline. Follow that, and I'm sure I'm joined by many colleagues in the room, and just you've made us all think this afternoon, and also reflect back. I'm not in the same place as many of the participants. I'm at in the twilight of my career, I would say, but lots of what you have said made me reflect, and I guess offer my own thoughts for our colleagues here today. I think what you've said should hopefully give confidence for our aspiring school leaders that it's okay to be learning. I know that we're fond in the professional learning and leadership team of looking at the work of Stephen Katz, and he talks about permission to not know is permission to learn. You don't have to know it all, folks, right now. And I think sometimes you can get caught up in that as an aspiring head. And Pauline talked about that uncomfortable recruitment process when you're asked lots of questions. And in an interview process, you might feel like you have to know it all. But really just embrace that. You're never going to know it all. But you can, as she said, know yourself, actually. If you know yourself, that's you going a long way there. And coupled with that permission to not know is that imposter syndrome, and we all get that. I have it every day. We all have it every day, and that's okay as well. Learning is the job. I'm still learning. I'm still loving learning. And I think just hearing those words from yourself are reassuring, deeply reassuring. Another, I think it was Daniel Goleman that wrote a piece in the Harvard Business Review years and years and years ago. I read it when I was doing, not even into Headship. It was the flexible route to Headship back in the day. And it was about the incomplete leader. You're not going to be all things to everybody. It's about, and you talked about it, Pauline, finding your people and complementing your strengths. So lots and lots of wisdom in there. Thank you. And also a really human and connected way of looking at the standard for headship and finding ourselves within that, which is really important on the programme at this point, just to really engage with it meaningfully.